that don't want you there in the first place. You know, so that doesn't even make any sense. So when you talk about really teaching, you have to deal with white supremacy.
And that's the solution I think that these two are talking about, that we can move forward from. I can't bring Trayvon Martin back to life. But I think that what we're talking about that has been lost from the civil rights struggle, and adding your piece about what the struggle is that we have a lot of talented human capital in our community that has left for very good reason. For very good reason. Because this choice isn't between, like, oh, I still want to be around white people. Some of us don't want to be around niggas either. Like, let's keep it real. Like, I don't want to live in the projects. I don't want that. I don't want to live next door to one. I don't want that. So many have decided to leave. And what we have now found is, by this whole concept of moving on up, being in white communities, being in these places, now Mr. Thomas has killed. Well, now Mr. Thomas has killed Lionel Jefferson. So is George Jefferson going to move back to his community and help rebuild that with his human capital, business acumen, etc.? That's the conversation that I hear, at least from these two.
But you know, what Brandon was saying, really to me, as far as just saving our young brothers, it gets down to survival, getting them to understand, look, this is the reality. That's one thing.
Exactly.
You know, that's just like, we all have had financial situations, like when your money's short, you pay to keep your lights on,
right.
You pay the minimum stuff, you pay the credit cards a month late, you know, and that's just reality, because you're in survival mode with, you know, with your finances. So I think that we have to, you know, if there's an at-risk group of young men, you say, hey, this is the reality. You know, if you get pulled over, this is how it's probably going to go down. So, you know.
See, if we don't teach them as well what the spirit of cooperation means. And that's what you were saying about being stopped, and you're announcing your moves, and you're keeping your hands when you see them, turn the lights on in your car, the whole 9 yards. See, that's all in the spirit of cooperation. The other piece is pay attention to that innate sense that lets you know you're about to get killed. We all know when it's that kind of danger. It ain't like it's just out of nowhere and you surprised. Oh Lord, no, it ain't that kind of party. What ends up happening is you get a sense early on when this conversation is not meaning nothing. This man ain't trying to establish no kind of eye contact or nothing. He's fidgeting, he's sweating a little bit. This is hit the gas move. Because see, if you're already in survival mode, you don't have to get there.
See, you use the term being spoon-fed. You know, misinformation, disinformation. And if you look at white supremacy and you look at what, you know, us being spoon-fed, we have to look at religion, economics, politics, because white supremacy is in all of those entities. One of the things that disturbs me about when I hear education is that I think we have to be more specific. You know, I don't have a quote-unquote formal education, but I earn an income. I'm in sales, so, you know, I do okay. But I think that for some, you know, going the trades route, you know, let's get you into plumbing, electrician, have a skill, because when you have a skill, you have more options. The more education you have more options. That's the way you have to present.
See, that's that survival mode that I'm talking about. Right. It's more than what somebody's laid out as your life curriculum. It's what you know is going to get you to the next day without being hungry. It's what you know is going to help your family. And the thing is, what I tell young cats all the time, be you, but don't commit no crimes.
But wait a minute.
It ain't that hard.
But
it ain't that hard.
But we're leaving something out. Now, I don't know. We're jumping around because a lot of the young guys I know that we feel that we got to have this conversation with, you know, one thing, they don't have a sense of hope. So, I mean, let's be real about this. You know, when you talk about that keen sense of awareness that comes with, okay, it's about to go down, a lot of cats, let's make it happen. So, if that's the case, that's a whole nother conversation.
You're talking about the one that's not taught, though. What I'm talking about is teaching a whole new brand of teaching.
Okay, well, even in that case, okay, then, you know, you got some kids who don't even feel like race matters. So in a situation like that, I mean, if we're talking about prevention, they don't even feel like race. Come on, man.
No.
No, they don't even think race matters. They don't even think race matters.
Their racial views have evolved.
A lot of our young people are like that.
They don't believe that race doesn't matter. Race has changed. Race has changed in America. That doesn't mean that it's changed completely. Well, there's no racism. Well, there's always these two choices that people force themselves to make, like one or the other. It is a straight up shame. No, you never know what we'll go. It's not a that racism.
Not too specific.
Yeah, but it's not. the fact that racism has been evaporated, but for many African Americans, they do. They grew up with a white friend.
Exactly.
They grew up with a. That doesn't mean that they don't realize that they're black.
But when you,
and
when you talk to a lot of these young folks, man, when you talk to
what
them,
age group you talking about? Like 16, 17, 15?
man, 14? I'm talking about when I was in the schools, middle school and high school. A lot of middle school kids, and when you talk to them, race don't matter because of what you just said. I got a white friend. Man, what you talking about?
He loaned me money and my black friend.
They don't see the institutional and structural components of race.
You're upset because a 14-year-old doesn't see institutional racism? Like, what kind of 14-year-old were you?
I tell you what, let me give you an example. I'll give you an example of why they don't see race. There was a kid I was talking to. He came up to one of the meetings. And he got in trouble at school. And so, everybody was talking to him, and, I'm one of those kids. We're going to break this down. Let's role play. I want to see what happened. And what happened was the teacher took he said he needed a pencil. So she just wasn't going to give him a pencil. She said, well, give me your key for collateral. So he had a key on, I learned that, so she put it around her neck. After class, when class was over, he was going to get his pencil, his key. He was like, here's your pencil. And she was talking to another student, so how, authority figures, let me finish this student. So not even acknowledging him, so that kind of ticked him off. Excuse me. And then he just took the key from around her neck. And before he even finished, I said, man, you got a referral, and you got on her attacked, you got on her aggressive. He said, how'd you know? Now, in that moment, white teacher, white female teacher, a black kid, and in that moment, he didn't even realize you don't run up on no white woman like that. So when I'm saying race, if he understood and was aware of race, he wouldn't have done that. Now that's my interpretation of what I mean when they don't understand race.
Can I turn? I want to raise kind of get back to a point I raised earlier. What are some things that we can do collectively that we do have some control over? Philip, what would you think there is as far as black leadership?
Stephan Johnson.
What are some things that we could do to where we could say, hey, over a 3-month time span, we could make this type of improvement?
Well, I think that depends on what the outcome that we're seeking. If the outcome is to lower the Trayvon Martin type situations, or not even those, the situations. I think violence and the way it's employed is much different than political organizing can achieve at this point. I think that one thing, and this is a conversation that Brandon and I have talked about, and you and I have talked about in the past too, which is that it's just in my humble opinion that part of the breakdown of black communities has been, and this comes from my Du Boisian just elitism, but talented people with human capital leaving that community. And more, because every community, does David Jones care what happens in Portland? Like when there's a shooting in Portland, for example, when a white person shoots someone, or meth, for example. Meth in Kentucky is the only exclusively white drug. Meaning that last year in Kentucky, all the arrests for selling and doing and dealing marijuana were white. There was no African Americans arrested for that drug. Do we consider meth to be the white drug? We don't. It's just a drug. I think part of the problem is that the talented people in our community have, for not all bad reasons, but have left that community, taken their talents with them, and we have a depreciated value. We don't have the intellectual, human, social capital that we had under an oppressive system. So I think that if we want to talk about Louisville specifically, I'm not going to tell people you need to live in West Louisville or you need to live in a certain place, because that doesn't solve all your problems. I think that what Dr. Wood said about that self-defense needs to be taught very early. If you're not teaching, if Trayvon Martin's father did not teach him to be wary, that's a problem. That's a problem when you don't teach your young men that they are black.
He didn't.
But
his demeanor, he ain't taught him nothing like that.
At the end of the day, I don't know the final 4 minutes of that confrontation. I do not know what happened. I don't know who threw the first punch. Really, they said that Zimmerman's injuries weren't even worth stitches. It was Band-Aids. I don't know who. I didn't see that, and that's one reason why Zimmerman got off. But I do know, as Shawn pointed out, there's something that I can't change that. I can't change a white female teacher being afraid of me. All I can do as we as black men can do, is teach those young men, first of all, those defense mechanisms, but also a way to avoid, but also to build up a community where they don't have to worry about that in the first place. I mean, that's
See,
that's part of the problem.
And that's my point.
You're trying to
And as a Muslim, that's one of the things that I believe that helps us not suffer from some of the ills that the black community at large is. You know, we spend the majority of our time and energy just focusing on, okay, what actually can I do on my own with the resources that I have? And that's the thing that troubles me when I go to different forums is we are, you know, all the demands are always put on other people. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying let the system off of the hook for their failures, but and I think it is okay to move out of the community without leaving the community. You know, I don't live in the hood. We don't live in the hood. You know, but I mean, I'm committed to the hood. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
so, and I think that what I would like to see out of this at some point, if we did some type of public forum with all of us, and we could be a leadership forum, we can maybe call it "Stay in Your Lane." And I think that's one of the issues that I have is that we don't recognize who's good at what, and so what happens is we wind up recreating the wheel. Right. So I remember I was at a forum one time. Somebody said we need a after-school tutoring program. Some brother sitting in the back room said we had one at the Catholic Enrichment Center for X amount of years. We only get 2 or 3 kids show up. I said, okay, well, what we're going to do is funnel people to his program. That issue solved. Let's go on to the next thing. I ain't going to create no other tutoring program. So, but like with us, I don't want to send people to Plymouth because I don't want them getting the credit. So I don't want to have Brother Jerald because he's a Muslim and I'm a Baptist
because our
preacher.
identity is not just black, right? I mean, our identity, we're people still. I mean, even though we're talking about white supremacy and blacks and whites, different cultures, we're people. So even though we share skin color, we do have other differences and other things we identify with, our neighborhood. You know, I grew up on, remember when Parkland Boys and Girls Club closed?
Right.
And you and I talked, and a lot of people would ask me, why don't the kids from the Parkland Boys and Girls Club want to go to the Shawnee Boys and Girls Club? Because they don't cross Broadway.
Right.
I know that's weird for you to understand,
That's
but part of their identity is I live south of Broadway and I don't fuck with anyone north of Broadway. Period.
Right.
Now you, as a white person, maybe as a black person, see, oh, you live in West Louisville too. Hold on.
Right.
I live in Chickasaw. He lives in Victory Park. Whoa, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Now, you don't. I've always agreed with you about African Americans being more united and being more cooperative in their economics and their politics. However, that doesn't mean that we can wash away these other differences that do mean a lot to these people, do mean a lot to us. I mean, those differences matter. So while we face white supremacy, we also have to recognize we are people who come from a continent, not a country.
Yeah, well, another piece to that is when you're sitting and you're looking at a group of people that actually love images. I mean, we love visuals. We love all of those kind of things that say we're taking a stand. What I would suggest is that no matter what organization or agency you're with, if we develop one agenda, one agenda piece that can be done within your calendar, can be done within whatever your focus is, and that's what we kind of keying in on. Say, for instance, if it were some level of tactical, intellectual defense, then teach it as you would teach it, but make sure it gets on the plate. We spend way too much time trying to maintain our spot.
Little people.
Yeah. See, and the thing is, excuse me, our spot is set up like it's set up, so that we'll spend time trying to maintain it.
That's why he put you in.
I'm trying to tell you. See, so the minute we can move away from that and start understanding, we got to try to cut down the numbers of young folks who don't have a chance, who don't actually have a chance, whether it be a physical confrontation or whether it be in the game of life. And the only way you're going to do that is preparing them for something.
So we're talking about life planning for black boys and black men, basically.
Oh, yeah.
From birth till age 5.
And call it anything we got to call it. But the one thing I do understand as well, too, the more palatable you make it for the other man, the better the chance is for you to be able to move with it for a minute. It's all a part of the game. You got to understand the game the way it's played.
Realize that as soon as it's successful, it will be worked on. Someone will try to destroy it.
Well, ain't no doubt about that, see? But then, again, that's another one of the things that if somebody's sitting here who's trying to decide whether or not we're talking straight talk, hears you say that, then immediately they move into, I ain't trying to get caught up in nothing like that. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, you see?
At least you hope so anyway.
Yeah, right. Well, and the thing is, some parts of what we teach have to be taught in the dark. So that you're talking about senses. So that you're talking about, I know what that sound is. You see, if that makes sense, I'm somewhere else for real.
You know, anything that is truthful, Minister Farrakhan teaches us, it can be verified in nature. When you put a seed in the earth, the first growth is not up, it's down.
It's down.
In the dark, you don't see it. When
right.
that baby is in the womb developing, it's darkness, but it's growing in darkness. We've all made some mistakes in our marriage and businesses, and it's a dark time in our life. But through that dark period, if we had the right attitude, there was growth.
That's right.
In that time of darkness, you know. But that's so true. What I found with a lot of people I don't care if it's in the corporate world or a black organization, it's about preserving your spot. Right. Now here's the thing. But when people, you said if we are successful, something's going to be worked on. Why is it then when we have sellouts and traitors in our community, how come we don't expose them? White America
in Louisville?
Yeah, white America exposes their enemies. Well, you know, if you're a Benedict Arnold, I mean, they put them out there.
The same thing that you just said is the reason why. Is because, and Brandon, you know, I've talked about this on your show before. There is no such thing as being black. Today, I went to Matt Bevin, who was running against Mitch McConnell for U.S. Senate, down in the Capitol.
Tea Party.
Tea Party. The woman who introduced him was a woman named Janine Hampton, black woman.
Mm-hmm.
She is the president of the Bowling Green Tea Party. She was born in Detroit. She grew up in Detroit in the 80s. Is she not black? No, is she not black?
She's a recruit.
We talked afterward. It was over. I said, yeah, so you're black and you're the head of the Tea Party. Here's a woman who grew up in Detroit in the 80s. Detroit in the 80s. Let me repeat that. Detroit in the 80s. So I don't think her street credentials should really be too questioned. But she got into the military, moved away. And one thing, and I said, so how?
That's a whole nother set of issues.
But I asked, I said, so how did you end up becoming the president of Tea Party? You know, being black, and she talked often about other black people would tell me, "Oh, if you listen to this music, you're not black. If I do this, I'm not." So here's someone who felt like she was being imposed upon. Right. So if you do hold black people accountable, realize this: the first thing people will say to you, you should know because you're in media too, is that you're selling out. So is Stephan Johnson selling out when he exposes a corrupt minister?
No. Well,
is he? Or is he? Or why isn't it said that he's exposing a corrupt minister who's hurting black people?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, but certain.
And we can talk about me too.
But you got somebody that don't like none of us that's gonna make mischief with that. But what I'm saying is,
and that's the dilemma of being black, Mr. Jerald.
But see, people, the issue that I have
that's white supremacy.
People should. If somebody sells us out, they shouldn't be comfortable in our community.
Well, but I think
you know, not that they're going to be physically threatened, but look, bro, we don't appreciate you.
You mean like
what you're
stealing
doing.
Money meant for a HUD program meant to build an old folks home and spending on gambling?
Yeah, see, that's
because guess what? When you do that, when you do that story or I do that story, someone will come to you and say, "Why are you messing with my ministry? Why are you selling out?"
So the question
Reverend
is,
Ockard, why are you selling out? Why are you selling out and putting this old man on blast who's helped our community for so many years? Now, is he a sellout or is he a helper?
That's the part we don't understand, though, Phil. We don't understand that some things are put out there for us to have a conversation about, so we don't have other conversations. If this woman that you talked about, you're going to spend enough time trying to figure out why this black woman is hooked into that mix. Who cares?
Well,
she gave all that up.
I didn't do the story.
You know, that's where I'm coming from. She gave that up, see? And then even any of those little things, man, where you got people worried about stuff that's off the agenda, off the focus. When it's off the focus, then that's a problem. But and a lot of things are put out there so to be off the focus.
I would agree that there are certain conversations like burying the N-word that are completely irrelevant to black people whatsoever. If you say nigga, if you don't, I really don't care. It's not the top 100 issue for me at all.
That was in the Village Voice.
Yeah. I do think, however, what Minister Jerald is saying is has to be sorted out, and we have to talk about it regardless of it's some people that's nonsense or not. Because when you're establishing a black agenda, if someone, like you said, is hurting the community, we have disagreements about that all the time. Your Tom is my militant. We've had this conversation before. Fred might be considered a Tom by some, but he might be considered a militant by others.
See,
I mean, who gets to determine?
but see, here's one.
And how does it have to be determined?
Well,
So that's what I'm saying. But that's that conversation I'm talking about.
He brought that. Hold on.
It's a distraction.
But something has to be determined. One thing that has to be determined is what is the sellout piece. I mean, one thing. I mean, really. No, I'm saying if there's 7 people at this table. So at the end of the day, what you may consider someone selling out, I mean, I don't know, another person did X, Y, Z.
Well,
so I mean, that's one thing.
Here's the thing, though, with myself, and I can only speak for myself with this, and I learned this after years. You have to respect a person's reality.
That's
with
right.
what they're dealing with.
That's
He
right.
can't. I mean, you have to, respect my reality. I mean, if I go do certain things in the church and Muslims like, "What are you over there with the Christians for?" and I'm with the Christians, and they saying, "Why are you over there with the Muslims?" You know what I'm saying? So I understand people. I'm not going to ask somebody, to do something, that's going to jeopardize them. I'm like, look, we're going to be on TV and the cameras are going to be there. So, bro, if you don't want to come, that's fine. But don't act like you black and you down and you hard. And this, when it goes down, you go on. And I don't consider that a sellout if you're saying, I'm not going to stand up and say this. And then look at the sin of silence. If you look at the sin, sin is commission, and omission. What if at the beginning as the NFL is getting ready to start, what if the football players said, you know what, we're not going to step on the field until this Trayvon Martin case is reinvestigated? What if LeBron and D Wade and Dwight Howard after leaving the Lakers? I mean, what if they took a stand like Muhammad Ali did? So there's also some accountability when people who can make it. There are people in this city that can stand up and say something that would mean more than all of us standing together saying something, but they're not going to say something.
But does that go back to what you just said about being a Muslim going into a Christian institution? Those same people that you say may have more influence than anyone at this table. Is it the same thing that you just said, but on a bigger scale? So is it? Well, I can't really say nothing about that because of where I am and what I do.
But to me, say that. See, the issue that I have is I've been to churches and pastors up. He's got his kente cloth on and he's black this and he's black that. But then when it comes down to go do something black, you know what? And I've talked to pastors. You know what? I've talked to pastors and they told me, you know what? I feel like I'm called to preach the gospel. That's what I do. I have Bible study on Wednesdays. I ain't getting out in the community. I have church. And you know what? So I mean, I'm fine with that because he's doing what he said he'd do.
But add to that, if he has that, then he also has a men's ministry. So yeah, you can stay and you can do your Wednesday Bible study and your Sunday sermon, but you're supposed to have a men's ministry because if you're doing what you're supposed to, you're going to have men following you.
Reverend Coleman was in the community, and I know church members, I have family members who went to his church and they wanted him to actually come out of the street so much. So, I mean, the disagreement is two people looking at the same thing from two different perspectives. There are going to be people who say they should be out there more, and there are going to be people who say, keep your butt in the pulpit. So, I mean, you're not going to make everybody happy.
Well, everyone, what you're saying is you got to follow the voice of your congregation. If your congregation said do this, because they're going to fire and hire you. Right. So I definitely understand what you said.
But but what I want to be clear on is that when a man is acting like he's something that he's not, that's my
all the time.
But you're talking about conscience.
Yeah.
You're talking about conscience.
But to a degree, black life is double consciousness. Black life is being two people.
Sure, you have to be.
It is.
What do women say they want? Brooks brothers.
Let me give you a second. Like I'm clear.
You know what it is.
I know it is. I don't do it. That's Paul Lawrence Dunbar, right? We wear the mask.
That's stretching.
Is that
was France Clark.
No. We wear the mask to the Hazards. That's Dunbar.
It's so long. He was not that boy. But my point is that I think when we talk about the struggle, I think each of us here is talking about the people we interact with. What I get from Shawn and Dr. Woods, and correct me if I'm wrong, is more what we would call at-risk youth. I don't know what that really means.
See, that's what the words do, though. That's what the words do. The words make us discuss it. When in fact,
that's a good point.
It's not ever supposed to be about what anybody says. It's about what they do.
Right.
Everything else is just something that you do to put a little icing on it or spin it.
Yeah.
But then we got to the point where we have to come up with these labels because in the work that we do, there's money out there, and that money comes with these certain labels. So
And you
if we don't
serve different
identify,
people.
if you don't identify, be real. When you write a grant,
Remember, when the last time they gave me some money?
I
They
only
gave me
give
some
my
money trying to send me to penitentiary with it. What part of the game is that?
But the thing about we were just talking about that, right? You were Mr. Joe was just talking about that. When we do it as men, when we're in the car, right? You say I'm reaching for my license and registration.
You do it
I
when
don't
you
have
meet a
anything
woman
on
on the street.
But no, what I'm saying when you said we're at risk, that's kind of I guess that's the question. Is that playing into a stereotype or playing into something? Because if we say okay, we're going to teach kids how to survive,
Right.
which is very authentic, and you have a kid that says, hey, look, this is 2013. They need to respect me. They need to let me be me.
Yeah.
They need to I'm keeping it
that's
real.
what they
They may need to, but they're not going to.
Well,
I mean,
but that's the thing. You got to
That's
make
the
sure they
survival.
understand.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean,
You know,
from
that-
that perspective,
different tactics in different
they're
sectors,
doing,
though.
they're doing them.
Like are you talking about the streets for
They're
the
all
most
the
part?
way
I'm
turned
talking
up.
about period.
See, I think it's different in
I'm talking about
the
period.
boardroom or classroom than it is in the streets. I don't know, speak for anyone else but myself, but for me, academic school was sport for me. I liked beating you. I liked beating
Yeah,
white
I
kids from the East End.
I watched you go through school.
Yeah,
You
I
love
loved
the
that.
sport.
I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
Like, so that wasn't the time for me to be all yes, I'm boss. And no, that's the time for me. I mean,
It was your thing.
yeah, like that's when you talk about Farrakhan and King, and that's the joust that I
But didn't you
want.
understand the game you were playing?
Yes.
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
you got to
What
understand
you dealing
what
with?
you're doing.
Let me say, you're dealing
When
with
the
a principle
alphabet boys came.
Yeah.
that is transferable to any walk of life.
Anywhere.
Mhm.
Anywhere,
Yeah.
anytime. And see, the other piece to that, real simple, is this. Everything that you're given in terms of discussion points
Mhm.
and the spoken word are distractions. That's not our language. It's distractions, man. I mean, what does this mean in stretching it out to have 5, 6, 8 different meanings? And then you got to describe each meaning because that's who you with.
Yeah, that's to
At
divert
that point,
your
yeah,
attention away from what the
exactly.
issue is.
And nobody's better at that than the other man. Nobody's better than that. How fast can they put a commercial on TV? Ooh, it's already there. See, that's what I'm talking about.
That's like with the Obamacare, in the healthcare. It's like all these they complaining about was not right, but everybody that's complaining about it are people with health insurance.
Anyway, Anyway,
I haven't heard one person complain about it. They ain't got no insurance.
well, the ones who don't know, yeah, you fight their own.
I mean, didn't they
Yeah.
complain about the civil rights bill too? I mean, didn't
No.
Lyndon Johnson have to call in strong arm some people on both sides of the aisle about that?
That's right, yeah. Exactly. At least that's what they say happened. That's what I'm saying. That's those words again. See, but I ain't care. Right about now, we got to figure out some kind of way to give our kids another day. And it ain't real easy. But
It's because see, you have to prioritize, and
That's
the first thing is let's keep you alive. That's the first thing.
that's it.
That's it. That's the bottom
That's
line.
it,
But the
man.
problem, if you remain in survival mode, when you're in survival mode, you have no creativity.
Right.
I mean, how many of us have been? If you've ever been in a destitute situation, you don't have no. If you're worried about your bills and you have no creativity because you're trying to shift things around and do. And,
That's what I mean by serving
and
different
then-
groups. That's why I mean by services.
Understanding that some of them are not going to get it that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 2 Mondays ago, about
Hey, it's
2 o'clock.
Is he still on? Anthony?
Anthony, you still there?
He was on mute or something.
You put himself on me.
I ain't worried about that.
He's still there.
No, I'm saying somebody was discussing the flashing light, man.
But you
I
know,
see the
But
flashes.
let me finish my point.
Yeah, my bad.
Now,
My
look,
bad.
here's a kid that needed to have help with his application for a job.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going through this application process, and he seems like he gets it. 11 o'clock, he's shot to death on Greenwood. Now, same day. Now the thing is, instead of me allowing my head to bow with that and run with the candlelight and all that,
teaching tool. Never got the teaching tool already. You got to play it that way. You know, so you get them together real fast.
Or balloons
and
and
put all that, man. All that. You know, come on now. Come on now. And guess who's waiting? Guess who's grinning every time we get a homicide?
Chris 2X.
The balloon people. The balloon people.
The camera people. You can't say the name.
Oh, it's a visual coming behind this one. Watch out. Come on now.
And that's the thing. And see, and that's what I said. And when I made the statement in the news, I didn't even know about the event downtown. Divine, you know, he texted me and said, "You do know," you know. I said, "No, I didn't know." But what I said, you know, burning the candles, fine. You know, letting off balloons. It's in the sense of helping someone to heal and letting people know they care. I said it's symbolic. It's an act of remembrance.
And some people will only going to understand that part.
But what we have to do, right, it's easy, but it's hard to roll up your sleeves. Like, we contacted some people and say, hey,
not everyone should roll up their sleeves.
Right, is that what we talk? That's what we kind of talked about earlier, right? We talked about everybody in their roles. So I guess it is a role. It is a role for remembrance, for observers. Because I mean, if we're talking about it, we're talking about 2X. If we talk about it,
and before him it was someone else too.
It's somebody. It's going to be somebody after.
Passing out free turkeys and T-shirts was being done since Frank Lucas was.
He says
free toys.
Brutally honest.
That's a part of what we do.
But see, the point with Phil though, I'm clear on what I'm gonna get when I'm dealing with Phil. You know, so and I think
in August we're not gonna be passing out free backpacks.
And right, but that's what I'm saying. We have to just be clear on who we are and what we're actually doing.
And the roles.
Let that be for that group. And that class, and that level of education or activism.
But these are some people that are involved with that and appreciate that, are people that don't otherwise have a voice.
And they need that. I always admit my tone is not the best. I'm not a politician.
You talk about grieving, and you got all these rest in peace shirts. And we know how long it takes to grieve over the death of somebody, so the only time I'm really getting that grieving, the only time I'm getting that counseling is when we do that piece right there. But then, after that piece right there, there has to be another piece
exactly.
that says,
and that's
how can we teach those other cats, because those other cats are thinking about retaliation.
And that's where the next person steps into their role.
You know what I'm saying? How do we do that?
That's what
somebody else's role, right?
But see, that's the part about it, and Dr. Woods knows this better than most, and Anthony knows about it as well now, that's the part of the work that, honestly, number one, most people don't care about. But number two, you don't want just any old person in there. I mean, like keep talking about a movement. I'm always a little skeptical of that because I have a feeling that we're saying we want more people involved. Listen, if 1,000 people showed up tomorrow, a lot of us would be like, I don't know what to do with it. Some of us would, but I trust Dr. Woods as a news source, as someone who knows things that some of us in here shouldn't know. Shouldn't know. I trust his judgment in that regard. Now, does that mean that I'm downing the balloon thing? No, I'm just admitting that's the most surface, juvenile, pathetic, pointless thing you can do. It's just there. It's the easiest thing.
Would you tell us how you really feel?
It helps you in a lot of respects to synchronize your focus a little bit. Because sometimes when we talk, you know, I feel like my job is to keep you from going off on some track that ain't gonna get you what you're after. You know, because you know, absolutely, because you're gonna browbeat somebody until they tell you what you got to
absolutely, do. Absolutely. Like that, and everyone has the different. My role is not to soothe you. I'm not. I can't speak for Stephan, but my role in journalism is not to do the fluff piece on how good of a person you are. My job, it's been made clear, is to expose the corrupt and punish the guilty. Now that doesn't mean that I should be your leader.
You're the judge and the jury.
And the executioner.
If you pull a case out, I'm out.
Now, I think you're better. I think you're better at some of the situations that we both know about.
That's right.
Where this man has actually saved lives, but we don't know the lives he's saved, and therefore he can't go on TV and brag about them.
No. Okay.
I want Brandon in the courtroom. I want Shawn talking about fathers. I want Brother Minister talking about spirituality. I've disagreed with all of you all at one point or another, and you disagree with me. The point, I think, let's go back to the original reason we're here. The Trayvon Martin case and what it says about our community and what we can do to save these black men and black boys. whether we save them in the projects or the streets or the boardrooms of America, from 0 to 5, from 5 to 11, what is the strategy for that? I think the accommodating strategy does work. But my personal opinion is that more and more I see it as we have post-civil rights movement gone out here into these communities, to these white communities, into these white businesses. We've gotten these white friends. Some of us have gotten these white women. And some of us have had a good, some of us have had a good time with that. I have friends and family members who are married. Fine with me. There's no objection to interracial dating on my part. Some of us have succeeded in that, some of us have not. But now more and more we're realizing in 2013, man, certain things just don't change. And I think that Brother Minister is right in the sense that we have to talk about solidarity economically, politically, and otherwise, because you can't change someone who is determined to kill you, whether with a gun, whether with credit, whether with a bank, whether with impeachment. You lied. They never said that to a president before.
No.
Never.
No.
So that was a form of it too. So that's the conversation that I think has to happen in 2013.
The problem, though,
whether that happens at the street level.
They're not. We're looking at it from two different perspectives again. I was debating this with David Scott yesterday because he said something that upset me. Every person in this room I know has been stopped or profiled because of the color of their skin. I was telling him about a time when my friend, who's a vice president at a hospital, and I were coming from CNN in a car. He had been interviewed for a job there. We were stopped by a police officer. We told him everything that should have led him to believe that we were on a mission headed back home. He even knew someone that we knew, a brother, Curtis Warfield, who's the president of a company, because he was working in Tennessee at the time. We had resumes in the back seat of the car. He still kept us on the side of the road for an hour, checked my license. Then he started to frisk me, and I said, "You got to be joking." He said, "You'd be surprised what we find out here." Well, when I was telling David Scott that story, you know what he did? He looked at me and said, "If that stuff is really happening, if it's really happening, seriously?" Because in his world, in his lily white world, it doesn't happen.